And welcome, everybody. Welcome to the stream. My name is David Matney with Nebraska Realty. And we got a great show for you tonight. We're going to look at three articles. They're all from Housing Wire. And we're going to go ahead and kick things off with the first article. And let me pull that up on the screen here. And if you're let me know where you're from in the chat, if you don't mind. If you're just typing in what city you're calling from, it's always kind of fun to see where people are tuning in from. So if you could do that in the chat, we'll kick things off. All right. And we'll start with this first article from Housing Wire. It's titled "Weekly Housing Demand Reaches Multi-Year High," which is a little bit unusual because that's not what we're really hearing about in the news. There's a lot of talk out there about the housing market being frozen. And this, of course, is written by Logan Motoshami, who is the lead analyst for Housing Wire. And hey, we got Clark is in the house. All right. Clark, always great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. All right. Excellent. All right. Clark is a real estate agent, a realtor from Atlanta, Georgia. So he's one of my moderators. So I appreciate him tuning in and helping out with the stream. So let's go ahead and kick this off with this first article. And it talks about how the first part of the article, he talks about mortgage rates and how when mortgage rates started going down and they got below 6.6%, more buyers came off the sideline. And all right, we got MH08062. He just goes by MH08. He's from Denver, Colorado. Welcome, MH08. So always good to see you. All right, excellent. But again, when rates go the affordability is the challenge right now for everybody, is because prices have gone up so much. But part of affordability is also rates. So when rates go down, it doesn't mean homes are affordable. It means they are more affordable. So, and then what happens when they start going down, then buyers start coming in off the sideline. Okay. And then let's take a look at where rates are at right now. Okay. And I'll share this with you. This is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. It's currently at 6.27% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And you can see how earlier in the year it was above 7%. So when 7%, when rates are at 7%, then that cools off demand. But when rates come below, start getting in that 6 range, then buyers start coming in off that sideline. So lately they've been coming down. So that's been a good sign. And Logan says because of that, because Logan says demand, when you combine mortgage application and pending sales, we're now at multi-year highs. And that's because if you go back and look at interest rates starting in 2022 when rates spiked, rates have been high. We even got as high as 8% back in 2023, and that really cooled off demand. But now rates are coming back down. Now, are we ever going to see interest rates like we did during the pandemic? Absolutely not, where rates are in the 2 to 3% range. No, that's not going to happen. But when rates go below 6, people still have to live their lives. I mean, buying a home is not just a financial decision. It's where you make your memories and raise your family and that sort of thing. You can't live in an interest rate. So, but as rates go down, more life events are going to occur and people have to move, and that's going to push people off the sidelines. Now, is it to where people, we got a whole bunch of folks that are priced out of the market? Absolutely. But it's kind of like pick your poison, because when we were in the pandemic market, rates were at 2 and 3%, but we were getting, we had 30 people lined up outside a home, and we had 45 offers on a property. That's not a healthy market. Now, what they did is they increased interest rates to cool off demand, and that's exactly what happened. But now, as rates start coming down, demand is starting to come back. So we'll go back to the article. And he also points out that inventory growth slowed from 33% earlier this year to about 14%, and it may slow even further. So inventory growth is slowing down. We still have we have a lot more inventory, which is good, but the growth is slowing down. Okay, then he starts talking about mortgage purchase application. Okay, and he talks about this chart here. Logan spends a lot of time on mortgage purchase applications because they're a leading indicator. Okay, mortgage applications are eventually turn into closed sales in 30 to 90 days later. And right now, as you can see, the red line is 2025. Well, they're both red, but the darker red is 2025 and the lighter red is 2024. So you can see that purchase applications are higher than the previous year. So they're up year over year, and they're up week to week. So, and that's been happening for 19 straight weeks. So when you have more applications out there, more buyers that's eventually going to lead to more sales. So that's a positive outlook. And Logan's takeaway is simple. If this holds, sales should look better heading into 2026. It's kind of like the last 3 years when we've been in a depressed market in terms of the number of sales. It's kind of like needing to go to a store in a snowstorm. Okay, you still need whatever you need at the store. Okay, you still need milk, but it's because of the snowstorm you can't go get it. But once the snowstorm clears up, then you're going to go to the store and grab that milk. So that's kind of what's happening in the housing market. Is there are buyers out there. There is demand out there. There are buyers that want to buy. They're just priced out of the market. Okay. And then he talks about, so that's mortgage purchase applications. Those are up. And then he goes in and talks about pending home sales. Okay. He looks at pending home sales, which typically close in the next 30 to 60 days. Pending sales just hit a 4-year high. Okay, so as you can see, I'm not sure if you can, maybe we need to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. This is total pending home sales. And here you have 2025, and that is above these 4 other years, okay, in terms of pending home sales. All right. And more homes are under contract now than in 2022, 2023, and 2024. So pending sales means if we're at pending sales in December are going to be closed sales in January. Okay. And then he talks about, next he goes into and explains about mortgage rate cuts haven't fallen as much as people expected, even with the Fed rate cuts. And we just had a Fed rate cut, but again, that's because the mortgage interest rates are dependent upon a 10-year Treasury yield. Okay, and then here is the 10-year Treasury yield, and that there's a difference between the 10-year Treasury yield and the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That difference is called the spread. Okay. And then let's see, Clark says, I wonder what price will have sideline buyers interested in possibly purchasing again. We know the people who got the money are still buying, but what will make the average American need price wise? I don't, here's the thing, Clark. I don't know if, and I think that it plays out in the data. I mean, people want price deflation, but is that going to happen? Um, I just don't see, and I'm talking about a national, in some markets, I definitely, like you're in Atlanta, I think you're seeing prices come down a little bit, but I don't know. They probably made such a mistake during the pandemic, not raising rates faster, sooner, that it skyrocketed those prices. And then they had to put the brakes on. And it was like a runaway freight train. And now what we got to have is time to unwind all of this. So even if you have, they try to get inflation down to 2%. 2% means it's still increasing 2% a year. That's not deflation. So um, I think what has to happen is I think they have to get creative in terms of making more housing options available, in terms of maybe manufactured housing, and getting creative as far as that goes, or um, building more condos or something to that effect. People have to get into the market. Um, but I just think, like in our market, and I don't know how, if you talk to um, agents in some of these markets like Jackie Baker. I don't know how a person in New Jersey or in the upper Northeast, I don't know if a person can ever buy a home unless they're extremely well off. We're very fortunate in the fact that we're from the Midwest and we're still somewhat affordable. But I mean, some of these other markets like California or San Diego, who on earth can afford a home out there? Even if you make great money, um, and if you made a couple poor choices, a younger person, those folks, uh, you got people that are the working poor are living in their cars. So something has to be done. I don't know. Um, you know, let's see. Yeah, we see prices coming down, but not to the point yet where a lot of sideline buyers ready to jump off the sidelines, and housings that are currently available aren't the best for the buyers that are currently looking. Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful about. I was talking to some young folks that bought a home a couple of years ago, and this thing was 100 years old and had a whole bunch of deferred maintenance to it. And you buy a home like that, and now you're saddled with a whole bunch of maintenance. So, um, and it shows in the data as well, because you have folks that are, your the median age for the first time home buyer is 40 years old. And for the typical buyer, this is not first time buyer, is 59. So the only people that can buy are folks that are in their 50s. That those folks can buy. But your person that's 30 years old, maybe they're fresh out of college, and if they have any kind of debt, or they have a car loan or anything like that, and they're not making that good of money, those folks are completely sidelined. And I think what has to happen is you have to get creative as far as maybe manufactured housing or something like that, in order to get people into the home ownership cycle. Because once you're in that cycle, you can build equity. Somebody that bought a home in Omaha, 5 years ago, and paid $200,000 for it, that home now, 5 years later, is 300,000. So they got 100 grand worth of equity that they can use and buy something else. But yeah, it's and our wages going to increase. They're going to increase, but not to the tune of what to where things are affordable. So yeah, I don't have. If I had the answer for that one, then but yeah, I don't have the answer for it. I'm just saying, hey, I'm just looking at what's. I don't know. Um, you know, let's see. We got another comment here. Yep, my place is a dump. I know it, and never be offended by a lowball offer. I will not take it, but I won't be offended. Yep. No, homes sell for market value. Okay, son of Joxer. Okay, let's see. It seems to me like the only starter homes left are in the pre-owned market. can new construction ever make starter homes profitable again? That's a really good question because um, now, believe it or not, in our market, there is a builder, and I just helped a buyer get into one that was new construction for 250. Okay, a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, a 1 car garage, but it was an infill lot. Okay, which means they took a vacant lot in North Omaha, and it was a program by the Holy Name Housing Corporation, or Holy Name. It was through a church or through their as through a nonprofit, and they were able to build these homes, really cute little places, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1 car garages for 250, and it could only be they only allow owners to buy that property. It could not be an investor, because an investor, trust me, would snag those things up. But they, part of this nonprofit, what their whole deal behind it was, hey, um, these are for owner occupant only. So that's a solution too. And it was a, you know, really nicely constructed home, and uh, really sharp. And my buyer was just thrilled with it, but it was only for owner occupants. And so it worked out really well for him. But yeah, there is situations like that. You got to be aware of it. But it's not like there's a big builder that's doing that on scale. Okay. I think they had about 10 actually. But those weren't flying off the market, because even at 250, you still got to qualify for that property. So it wasn't like they were flying off the shelves, because even at that, at 6% and at 250, those are um, expensive for a lot of folks. So, and we have Angie Madcat. Good evening. Well, thank you, Angie, for stopping in. And then let's see, it says MH08 06 or 62. And I know I got so good at saying MH08. Too many investors just want to tear this place down. Hard to put money into maintenance in that scenario. Yeah. Um, yeah, no, it you got to be, yeah, that's exactly. So, all right, we'll go back to the article here, but they're talking about, let's see, YouTube's YouTube adds a 6 too. Okay. Because there's 61 other MHOHs. All right. And then he talks here about mortgage spread. And this is where I was talking about the spread between the 10-year treasury yield and mortgage rates. Okay, Clark says, and outside of new construction, we have to be realistic home sellers. I met with a seller the other day who wanted 500,000 for her house when it was only 225,000, according to what the market has indicated. Yes, that is absolutely true. And I think what you're going to see is a lot of uh, folks that, if they're not going to be real, that's clearly not realistic. And um, yeah, and I remember, I had a seller one time where uh, I was I was their ninth agent, and this was back in 2008. It was an expired listing, and I was the ninth agent that came along, and they actually put it on the market for 225, and they got an offer for 200, and they didn't take it. Okay, and then 2.5 years later, it sold for, or 3.5 years later, it sold for 135. So sometimes your first offer is, this was during the great financial crisis. So expireds. When you look back at the great financial crisis and the amount of inventory we had 6,000 homes on the market. And if you sold a home in 30 days, you were a superhero. 25% of the homes, and this was in Omaha. So this wasn't, some of these other really crazy markets. It was, and I worked expired listings at the time, and I really liked expired listings, and they, it was amazing the number of homes that would expire, and yeah, it was uh, pricing, but people overpriced their homes. I'm sure since the dawn of time, there was a cave person way back in the day that when they went to sell their cave, I'm sure they overpriced it, so yeah, I was the ninth agent. Yeah, there's, like I said, it was a whole, but I was a new agent back then, so I didn't even really understand. I was a couple years in. I got licensed in 2003, and so I wasn't an agent that long that I was just kind of, it's like, well, okay, this is the market that I'm in, and you got to go where the fish are. So I worked expireds, and I started out working for sale by owners, and then I shifted over to expireds, and still have some of those same clients today. In fact, now I'm working with some of their kids that I've helped when they're home. I helped them sell back then, and now their kids are grown, and now I'm helping their kids buy homes. So that's kind of fun. Um, we'll jump back into the article here. So, and again, he explains how in 2023, the spread between the 10-year Treasury and the 30-year fixed rate mortgage was 2.75%. So let's say um, the federal funds rate back then was 5%, then the mortgage interest rates would be 7.75%. So it'd be 2.76% higher than the 10-year Treasury. So where's the 10-year Treasury now? The 10-year Treasury is now at 4.17. But as you can see, earlier in the year, it got as high as 4.79. Well, then that means that affects the spread. So what we're having is in 2023, the spread was a lot higher. Then in 2024, it got a little bit better. And now it's even better yet. Now it's still at 2.06. Now I think normal spreads are like 1.5. If it gets lower, then that's better. Okay. So the spread is getting better, and that's helping things out. And again, helping things out. But again, if a person, it's getting more affordable for the people that are extremely well off to afford a home to start with. Again, if you have any kind of blemishes, or if you have any kind of a credit challenge, or you have a whole bunch of debt, those folks, or if they have car loans and credit card debt and student loan debt, and I feel bad for the younger generation now who was sold a bill of goods about going to college, and then they go to college, and then now, hey, they graduate from college and now they can't get a job. So those folks, I don't blame them for being ticked off about it, because that would definitely not be a good spot to be in. Okay. Talked about mortgage spread, and then housing inventory data. Okay. He points out that inventory is now declining for normal seasonal reasons. Okay, and this is where we're getting back to. This is single family inventory. Inventory is up 13.69% year over year. So inventory increasing is a good thing, because that means as inventory increases, then buyers have more choices, and it makes home prices not go up as fast. Okay, now let's just take a look at our current market here and show you our current market. Okay, this is November median sales closed. The November median closed price for Douglas and Sarpy County, and we can see where the price was 0.9%. So it didn't go up like it had been in 2024. It was up 10% over 2023. So looking back, let's go back. Let's change this to a line and go back 5 years. Okay. And this is showing, this is the median closed sales price in Douglas and Sarpy County. And you can see there's month to month fluctuation. But you can see back in, we're in December of 2020, the median closed sales price was $230,000. Okay. Now it is $341,000. So it's definitely gone up. But what you've seen looking at here is, and this is showing month to month fluctuation. We'll take this to a 12-month rolling average. And now what you can see is this is starting to flatten out. Okay. Now, if prices remain flat for a while, then what's going to happen? Wages will eventually catch up. I don't know how long that's going to take. You know, if I was reading something today where wages were up 3%, and if housing prices are, this is, 1.5%, and then we can separate it by new construction. Okay, this is existing in red. So existing, we're looking at, and this is over 5 years, over a 12-month rolling average. Existing was at 305,000, and new construction was at 424,000. But look back in 2023, okay, it peaked out at $445,000. So new construction has came down, and Angie is absolutely right. It'll take years for wages to catch up. And what's happening, Angie, is you see that because the median age of the first-time home buyer is 40 years old. So what's happening is, and right now we're in the echo boomers, the millennials, the peak segment of the population is in their mid-30s and peak buying age. Well, you have that's all demand, okay? And what's happening is that's pushing that age higher and higher. You got to be 40 years old and out of debt. And, that's, people are not necessarily, when you need a home is when your kids are little and driving you crazy. So, yeah, I mean, I'm working with a lot of first-time home buyers now that are a lot older than I've ever worked for in the past. And this is Omaha, Nebraska. We're talking more affordable home prices compared to, some of these other markets. I mean, San Diego or someplace like that, good grief. Well, and last week we looked at Aspen, Colorado. I'm like, in Aspen, the millionaires are priced out of the market. I mean, yeah. And Angie says, unless you're in AI, yeah, and how many jobs is that going to displace as well? So, I really think that the place to be is probably in the trades. But even when you're in the trades, that wears a person's body down over time. So it's hard to be 60 years old and hanging drywall and that sort of thing. That's a hard life. So, but yeah, yeah. But now I think some of this too is not new home prices crashing. I think what it is builders adjusting to the market, because the builders, what they'll do is they'll look at things and they'll go like, hey, if we're not selling the really, really big 2-story 5-bedroom, but we're selling a lot more of the 3-bedroom ranches, they're going to adjust what they're building. Okay. And MH08 says trades are also cyclical too. Exactly. So everything's sensitive to the economy. That's why you got to prepare, and you got to, and I sound like a broken record with this, and I even tell my kids this, and you got to prepare well in advance for some of this stuff. So yeah, um, and you got to prepare for if prices do take a hit or you do lose your job, then uh, you got to have some money saved back. Otherwise, you're going to be forced to sell. And if the the and what we're starting to see now is you're starting to see more um, foreclosures have increased. We're in a more normal market. It's just that things are so unaffordable for folks, and you can tell that in the number of closed sales. Look at how we'll look at closed sales here compared. We'll go out 10 years. Okay, um, this is the number of closed sales. Okay, this will go. We'll take it back. All right. This is a 12-month rolling average of closed sales. Okay, we were, coming out of the pandemic, when rates were real low, guess what we were doing? We were selling a boatload of homes. We were selling 14,000 homes, okay, per year. All right. And then what happened when rates increased? Look at how the number of sales tanked. Okay, then we went to 10,000. And now look what happened. It's increasing a little bit. Okay, but this is going back 10 years. Okay, let's go back, max it out. Okay, now this right down here, this is when they switched over the MLS. So I don't trust this data at all here. Anything, I don't know when we switched to Paragon, but I don't trust those numbers before 2006. Look at during the Great Financial Crisis. We still in June of 2011, during those years, we were still selling 7,400 homes per year. Okay, but the population of Omaha was a lot smaller then, so we had a smaller population base, 15 years ago compared to today. We have a lot more folks out there, and we're still not selling that many homes. So, and you see a lot of agents feeling the pain from that because agents, the pool of buyers is getting smaller, so fewer and fewer agents are closing deals. So there's going to be a lot of agents leaving the business. Okay, Clark says yes, and even looking at repeat median buyer being 62 and the regular median buyer being 59. Yes, I mean, now I have a theory with that, Clark, and that is I think, and you tell me what you think about this, and that is I think a lot of those folks that are in their late 50s and 60s, I think what those folks are doing, or I think there's some that are buying homes for their kids. Okay, I've talked to a couple of friends of mine, and they've have done that to where they're buying homes for their kids. But what happens if you don't have parents that are well off? Then, if you're, yeah, I mean, I just don't see where that. It's something that, and there's more regulation, just to get it. And I've probably told this many times before, but I was at an event where they talked about how much does it cost to develop ground to where they can build on it. And part of the regulation is they used to be able to put 3 to 5 homes per acre, 3 to 5 lots or 3 to 5 homes on a particular acre of ground. Now it's down to 2 to 3 homes per acre because there's more regulation dealing with runoff and things like that. So, I mean, some of that regulation is necessary. You got to have a safe home, but it's just simply there's all sorts of regulations out there that every year they say, well, this will add another $200 per build. Well, that all adds up over time. So, a lot of times the regulation sounds good. You want a safe home, but a lot of times it's like, well, when you do that, guess what? That adds to the cost to build, and that's going to put more people out of out. Just look at the regulations concerning gas in California. I think in California they pay $6 a gallon for a gallon of gas. Well, they have to have special, um, you know, uh, blends of gasoline. Well, then guess what? What does that do to the price of gas? Well, that increases the cost of gasoline. So I'm not a big regulation guy. You know, are some regulations necessary? Yes, but you keep piling on regulations, you're putting more and more folks behind the power curve with that. But that's, uh, let's see, Clark says, I have seen that also giving their kids larger deposit to put down on a house too. Yes, but again, what about the kids that um, don't have parents that are well off? Those folks are uh, you know yeah. See, MH08 says mandatory car chargers in new Denver construction. Yeah, see, so how much does that add to construction when you say, okay, now we're going to say, hey, there's going to be mandatory, car chargers, and it's just like with rent, okay, um, when you put on more regulations, and um, it's just like the cities that have rent control. Guess what? Have some of the highest uh, rents. So if it was such a good idea, then you're never going to convince me that rent control is a good thing. Um, you know, I'm a free market type of guy, but let's see. The gas in California yesterday was 419 down from 439. Still not great. Yeah, I was, I don't know what it was. Yeah, but I mean, what is it in I forgot what it was in Omaha, but um, you know, I had a client that came in from California, and he was shocked at our gallon for a gallon of gas what we were paying, and so yeah. And then starting January 1st, can only buy low nitrous oxide gas appliances in Colorado. See, and that's another more regulation, and it all sounds good. It's all good intentions. I mean, you know, um, I wow. They estimate the car chargers will add $30,000, and it's Colorado, and it's electric car, and you got all that snow. How well are they going to do in the snow? I was watching a thing on yesterday how some of these electric vehicles are tanking in terms of um, their their price, their resale value. Not necessarily even like on the especially if they don't. I don't figure out what company it was, but I was just watching some YouTube on it and how much they've taken in terms of a hit because they're not being upgraded or whatnot. Gas in Denver was 239. Wow, that's good. Yeah. Okay. Um, Angie Mad Cat says, but with Valero gas leaving California in a few months, prices will go up way up again. They're taking $1 billion loss to get out of the state. Yep, and that's unfortunate, Angie. I mean, but I mean, whenever you have um, one party control of anything is not good. Um, I mean, even if you're on that side of the aisle, I don't know what side of the aisle you're on, but um, one party control. Sometimes divided government is good because they're forced to compromise and work out a solution. And then sometimes they're not able to do anything, which sometimes that's even better too. I'm kind of proponent of that. So um, let's see here. MH0862. LO, yep, EV in a traffic jam in the mountains, windshield wipers going, heat running, headlights on, radio on, brakes lights on. Yeah, that's yeah. Um, all right, we have Chels 904. That's welcome to the stream, Chels 904. What are the best first time home buyer programs in Omaha? There's a lot of them. We have something called NIFA. Okay. Um, Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. That's a great first-time home buyer program. And there's a lot of individual banks and credit unions that have different little programs as well. What you can do is, if you want to contact me after the stream or tomorrow, you can, and I can put you in touch with someone to point you in that direction on that. Let me put my, you can shoot me a text and I can put you in touch with somebody if you want more information on that. And we might have, that's probably a good title. That's probably a good topic for a stream to bring on talking about that. In fact, I have, in the past, I have a stream on that. So let's see here. Let's see, try to find it real quick. Let me see here. Hold on a second. Let me, it'll be just a second. Let's see. I'll leave a link to this one in the stream. I'll try to do this without making noise. Share, copy in this one. I'll put that in the chat. I'll put that in the chat, Chels 904. This one here. That video there, you can click on it. It's we did a one called NIFA. I'll show it here. Let's see here. Let me find it. I just clicked on it. I just had it. Okay, share this tab. Okay, this one right here. This one here. If you want to click on that stream, or like I said, you can contact me afterwards, and you can get you in touch with that. All right, cool. Good question though. And again, that's probably something we should do for a stream. All right. Oh, I don't think it. I don't think it let me put it in the stream there. I tried to text it out there, but it didn't let me go. Let me try it again. Paste. May not let me. It may not do it. But good question on that one. All right. Cool. Comments. And then Angie says they don't want to deal with new regulations coming in 2026. Yeah, I'm sure of that. It's always driven. Everything's driven by politics, and housing has to do a lot with politics because housing policy is directly affected by it. I mean, look at what Fed policy did. When inflation was going up, remember when we were all told it was transitory and we weren't experiencing inflation, but then we actually were, and then they decided to rate. Don't get me wrong, when rates were low, you knew it was going to end. As a real estate agent, it's like, hey, you got to make hay while the sun shines. But you knew that train was coming to the station, and you knew eventually that was going to, and we've, even though, we back then we were selling, 4 years ago during the pandemic, it was an accelerated market where homes were, we were selling a bunch of homes a lot, but the churn, the rate was so fast. So we were selling a bunch of homes. It's just that homes weren't on the market for long at all. They just disappeared. And we're suffering from that now. So hopefully that came across okay. So anyway, Chels, appreciate the question, Angie. Thanks. Good question there. Let's see here. All right, single family inventory. And you can see where 2025 is 2019. It's good that we're coming back to 2019 inventory. Now, just on a local level, inventory wise, let's see here. We'll get back to monthly and And this is, let me share this tab with you. Okay, this is November homes for sale, Douglas and Sarpy County. We can see inventory was up 8.9%. Okay, now if we move this out and go back 10 years, okay, do you see where our inventory is at now at 2025? And do you see how low the inventory was in this area here? That was so unhealthy. Okay, so unhealthy down in here. Okay, um, for a market, Douglas and Sarpy County, Omaha is a metro area of over 1 million people, and to have 682 homes on the active market back then is truly unhealthy. Look where it was in 2019. You can see where, okay, um, inventory was at and inventory is cyclical. It moves up and down, and there's a seasonality to the market. As you go into December, what happens? People take their homes off the market. Okay. Now, if we separate this out from, this is total homes for sale. If we go construction type, okay, the red is existing, the green is new construction. Okay. And do you see how new construction remains relatively stable? Okay. But even during the pandemic, look what happened to new construction, because we had lumber go crazy. Lumber was at 1,800 for 1,000 board feet, and we had you couldn't get garage doors and things like that. So you had all that craziness going on, and then it picked back up again. Okay, and now uh, it's starting to resemble the pre-pandemic market, which is good, which is what we want. Okay, it's still not affordable, but you want to return to a more normal market. Okay, in the early 1980s, I was in junior high back in the early 1980s, and I remember when my sisters, I have some older sisters, when they were to go buy a home in the early 1980s. Let's see if we can pull that up. Interest rates. Yeah, we can pull this up. Okay. This is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Okay, look back at 1980s. This is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage was at 17%. Okay. Well, guess what? Now home prices weren't very high, but still that was a very unaffordable time as well. And back then it was kind of the thing to do back then. It seemed like everybody was adding an addition to their house. But back then, a couple of my sisters were buying homes back then. Well, guess what? They couldn't buy a home. They had to buy one from my dad. And my dad charged them 10% interest. So he gave them a deal at 10% interest. But back then they couldn't. Yes, MH08 is right. Assumables were all the rage back then. Yes. And assumables are coming back too. Okay. I've had a couple that did assumable loans. But back then, my sisters couldn't afford a home at 17% interest. I mean, we complain about interest rates being at 6 or 6.5. We'll try, I remember I bought my very first home in August of 91, and it was a rental property back then. And I remember my interest rate was 13%. And I'm like, well, I didn't know, I didn't understand interest rates and how that worked. I'm just like, well, that's the rate. Now they're giving me a loan, and I paid it off. The house was only $10,000, but I remember when interest rates, got under, 10%, it was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I bought a couple rental properties in the early 2000s. And I remember when interest rates were in the sixes, it's like, wow, this felt like free money. And then when rates, the problem is after the great financial crisis, when rates we got so spoiled for so long at 4% interest rates, below 5%. It was like, wow, that was a really, you know, then when it went to 3, um, everybody refinanced or bought a home, and that money was so free that it was like, geez, um, I should have just bought a house, just even though I was like, gosh, that, money was so free. I should have bought a house. But I was like, I didn't. But hindsight's always 2020. But I mean, it's amazing how that uh, interest rates, what interest rates do. So let's see, my first rate was 7.75, and now I have a 3%. Good for you. Congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah, that's yeah, that, and it's hard to move from a 3% interest rate, especially if you're happy there, so, but here's the thing, life events are going to happen, and people are going to have to move, and that's going to happen. So, but let's see, going back, but anyway, single family inventory is coming back to more 2019 levels, which is good, and what we want to, I better share the right tab with you, which is good and what we want to see. And then new listing data. Again, this is following that same. New listings are also falling seasonally. 2025 listings were higher than 2023 and 2024, still among the lowest years on record. Okay. I'm making a move out of state. Yep. Nope. A lot of people are doing that because it's like they're going to a more affordable market. Or is that what's going on in your case, Angie? Are you going to a more affordable market? A lot of folks, they want to be closer to grandkids. That's a big driver, because if you're 60 years old and you have little grandkids and you have that money, guess what? You're going to make that move. Um, let's see. Clark says, do you think the rates declining and staying low for a long time during the great financial crash caused prices to rise quicker before the pandemic caused them to go? But let me read that again. Do you think the rates declining and staying low for so long during the great financial crash caused prices to rise quicker before the pandemic caused them to soar higher? I had a theory. I heard something today, and it dawned on me, and I'm like, wow, that made a lot of sense. And I want to go back to this here. Okay, I'm going to show you guys this here. I'm going to go for homes for sale, and I'm going to go max this out. Okay. And I came up with a theory. Okay. This is homes for sale. Okay. This right here, 2008, okay, to 2012 was the great financial crisis, right? Okay. This was the red is, this is homes for sale. The red is existing. The green is new construction. Okay. Here's my thought process, Clark, and that is this. There's a lot of folks that says we didn't build enough homes after the great financial crisis. And I thought about that, and somebody said, no, that's not true, because here's the deal. Builders are out to make money. They wouldn't hold back and say, hey, we're not going to build a home. If they can make $1, they're going to make $1. Okay. So they're not going to hold back. If they can make something and sell it, they're going to sell it, because why would it make sense? If it's like saying, well, hey, now what happened? Here's what I think happened. And that is, look at new construction in the Omaha market leading up to the great financial crisis. We had an influx. We had the most new construction. We built a bunch of homes. We overbuilt before the great financial crisis. Then we had to flush those out, and we had to flush out that existing inventory. So I don't think they were building because they were still selling the ones that they built prior to. Does that make sense? That was my thought process on that, because it's like, well, gosh, if they could make money, they would make money, and they're going to make, they'll build it to make money. But if they're trying to sell their existing inventory, then they're going to get rid of that. Okay. Um, because new construction remains relatively stable. So I think that's what it was. I think we had such a the post great financial crisis was such a slow recovery, is why we didn't build as many homes. It took a long time to recover from the great financial crisis, is what my thought process on that is. Um, but it makes sense to me to think, well, gosh, if they could make money on it, they surely would. Um, so, um, so you think that, you agree with that? You think that made sense? Okay. Uh, um, do I think decline? Yeah, I mean, I think having that cheap money for so long definitely. Now let's look at prices overall. Um, the median closed sales price. Okay, um, and we're going to smooth this out. Okay, this was new construction. Okay, this was the median closed sales price. Um, 2000. I don't know. Okay, this was March, February. If they would have raised rates a little bit sooner, like you know, um, could they have kept those prices down longer? I mean, hindsight, probably so. Um, I think I think that pandemic was such an unknown that they didn't know, that they were so afraid that they panicked. And but people were still buying homes, and then people were shut in their house, and they're like, I want a pool or whatnot, and I can afford to do one because the money's so cheap. And so I don't know. I mean, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but going through the pandemic, I mean, it was like, gosh, or who knows what. But um, I don't know. It's something to where it's like, I have a really eh, not a very not a big trade, a lot of faith in the old government there. But let's see. Son of Joxer says, I locked down a 4.5 fixed rate in 2009. Better times for buyers. Yeah. I mean, look at 2009. Let's go back to just the overall. 2009 in the Omaha market, $139,000. Yeah. I mean, but you know what? Guess what? Back then, $139,000 for, a celebrity home back then, that was, let's put the new construction in there. You know, um, $214,000. I mean, I remember back then it was like, wow, $200,000 for a home. That was a lot of money. That was, you know, um, but look at existing was 133,000. So um, the best time to buy a home was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. We're probably, we'll probably look back and say, wow, I remember we could have bought homes for $300,000 and we didn't do it. Now they're 600,000. So yeah, we'll um, you know, real estate trends with inflation. It tracks with inflation because just the cost of materials goes up, and that drags up the cost of new construction, which drags up existing. So, just like when we were looking at um, what was it, Aspen last week, when we were looking at a $22 million house, and then it was like, oh, 10 years ago that thing was only 6 million, and it's like, geez, but we should all went together and bought ourselves a house in Aspen back 10 years ago. But um, what are prices going to be 10 years from now? I mean, yeah. But congratulations on locking down that 4.5. Let's see. MHOH says, but then the grandkids move, and there you are. Yep. Okay. Planning on paying off the new house off, and yes, my daughter lives there. but I have a son here and he doesn't want to move, at least not now. Okay, gotcha. Okay. And then don't forget that Clinton eased regulations for speculating on mortgage markets, also motivated the building boom prior to 2008. Yes, I mean, um, and George Bush number one, or George W. Bush, was encouraging folks, encouraging home ownership, um, early in his presidency, and they eased up some of those regulations on loaning out money, and then that backfired. So sometimes, here's the other thing too. We talk about regulation. You got to be worried about, well, when they cut regulation, that can backfire too, because they gave out a whole bunch of, they had all sorts of crazy loans where you didn't have to have a job and they were giving you money, and that's not a good thing either. So yeah, that um yeah, I mean, I so you hopefully you have, you know halfway decent representatives, but we know how that goes. you know um so that, I mean, funny funny that I did by 20 years ago. Hey, I fogged the mirror. Yes, yes. I mean, I remember when I bought um, my very first rental property back in '91. They had a regulation that you could buy um, 10. You could get loans on 10, and then they dialed that back to where you could only get loans on 4, and they dial that stuff back. Back and forth. But here's the thing, though. That's why you got to have a long term about this. And then, buying a home is, it's a financial decision, of course, but it's also it's more than that as well. So you want to buy a home that you can afford. You don't want to get in over your head. And nowadays everything's so doggone expensive. The insurance is high and taxes are high, and you know I'm in my 50s, and we got to think about retirement and things like that. You got to be putting money aside for retirement. And then so you got folks that can't buy a house. They're buying their first home at age 40, and they're trying to save up enough money just for down payment. Those folks aren't able to uh, you know if you got to start planning this. I'm gonna you know you got to start putting money away early in life, and let that puppy compound, and then you'll be okay. But um, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. But good discussion tonight, guys and gals. I appreciate it. Um, all right. Well, he talking about demand coming back. Um, and then we'll finish this off here. Um, price cut percentages. Um, he talked about Logan explains that price cuts are normal when rates are elevated. When rates go up, people cut prices, and price cuts are in line with. And then a week ahead, a lot of data. And I think the jobs came out. Jobs came out at 4.6%. So inflation. It'll be interesting to see where some of these numbers pan out. So I don't think that the economy is bad as people think it is, and I don't think it's as good as some people want it to be. So um, I think you got to make your own economy, and make your own decisions and things like that, and be prudent about things, and things like that. And hopefully you get good information and things like that. But there's, it's discouraging for a lot of folks, because there's a lot of folks out there that like to buy a home that they can't. But I think you got to just, I think what's going to happen is you're going to have folks coming out of this, all of this, are going to be a lot wiser about in terms of long range things. It's just like my dad was a product of the Great Depression. Well, I can tell you this much. My dad viewed money a lot differently than, um, my sisters who were grew up in the 60s, when he grew up in the 30s, and how rough it was when he was a child. And he would let me know how nice we had it. And, but that hard times make strong people. And I think what's happening now is the folks that are going through hard times are going to be really strong coming out of it, which, um, I'm trying to see something positive about it. But anyway, that about does it for tonight. So anyway, any other questions before we go? If you have any questions or anything, appreciate you guys stopping by. Let's give old Clark a plug. He's always giving me a plug on. Be sure to check out Clark on his channel here. Devon Clark. Let me share his screen here. Clark, I love your avatar. That's awesome, buddy. Yeah, Clark. He has a live show on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So always, am I going to be? Let's. Thank you, Clark. Good show tonight. Okay. Am I going to be on next week? I was thinking about that. Should we give it a break? Should we give it? What do you guys think? Do you guys want to give? You guys want to give it a rest next week since it's the 23rd, and you guys enjoy your holiday? We'll come back after that. I haven't decided. All right. You're welcome, Clark. You're welcome. All right. Angie, thanks for the chat while I'm wrapping presents. All right. Thank you very much, Angie. I appreciate you stopping in, everybody. All right, everybody. And I'll plug my channel here. Let's see. Let's see. All right. If you don't mind subscribing to my channel, I appreciate that. And if you ever want a consultation, you can scan that QR code or shoot me a text or give me a ring. And then, all right. When doesn't David have a great show? Yeah, they do a fabulous job. Jen and Jackie do a fabulous job. I watch their programs and I am intimidated because I'm like, wow, that really is quality. I'm trying to. You know what? Here's the good news: is I think. I hope I prepared. I try to prepare. I prepared notes tonight because I thought instead of reading it, I was gonna read notes. So I thought, well, okay, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, everybody, I really appreciate everybody stopping by tonight, and we might give it a rest next week, and then we'll come back the following week. So that'll be. Let's check the calendar here. The calendar is going to be the 30th. The bowl game is Nebraska plays in the bowl game on New Year's Eve, so that won't be a show night. But anyway, I appreciate everybody stopping by. You guys take it easy. We'll see. We won't go next week. We'll go the following week. So I appreciate everybody. You guys take it easy. All righty. Have a good night. Bye-bye.